Lori, I think we're all set.
Okay. Welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and start doing a screen share, but thanks for joining us today. I am Lori Andrews. I am the president of the Community Foundation. I know so many of you. Thank you for joining us. I am joined by my colleagues today, Erin Lucens, the Chief Financial Officer at the Community Foundation, as well as a great team from Impact Investing Consultants, Social Finance, which consists of Mike Silvestri, Kathleen O'Shea, Tharika Gopinath. We are excited to have you all with us today to talk about the launch of impact investing program called Invest Jackson. What is impact investing? Impact investing is making investments with the explicit intent of generating both financial return and measurable positive community impact. We initially identified impact investing as a key priority of our 2022 to 2024 strategic plan. During those first few years, we focused on education, an educational process to both understand the work that our community foundation is doing and to scan our community nonprofits to build a program tailored to the needs of Teton County, Wyoming. During the program's initial development, we also spoke with local banking partners to raise awareness of future partnerships and to learn how best to support one another. What you will hear today is how we have leveraged that initial educational work to create the program we are sharing with you today called Invest Jackson. In a moment, I will turn this over to our partners at Social Finance to talk through why we have created this program. Erin Lucens will then discuss the program overview and provide information on our two pilot investments. Following the conversation, the chair of our working group, Ian McLeod, will facilitate a discussion with key partners in one of our pilot investments to share more about Invest Jackson in action. Lastly, we will make sure to have some time for question and answers. Thank you again for joining us today.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lori, and thank you again all for joining us today. I'm Kathleen O'Shea. I'm a director of impact investing at Social Finance. As the team alluded to, Social Finance is a national nonprofit and registered investment advisor. We were founded about 13 years ago, and our focus is really making it easier for individuals, foundations, families, and other institutions to make their philanthropic capital invested in alignment with their charitable goals. And so we partner with community foundations all across the country to launch and expand impact investing programs and have been thrilled to be a partner to the Community Foundation of Jackson Hole on this pilot fund. So Tharika, if you could flip to the next slide, I'm going to speak to a little bit impact investing in general and kind of how we think about the need locally for this type of capital in Jackson Hole. Flip to the next slide, Tharika. Great. So one of the starting points for this program, as Lori alluded to, is acknowledging that some of the most pressing challenges in the community in Jackson Hole and really writ large across the country are some of the costliest to address. And this really requires us to think beyond traditional grant making in order to tackle some of these challenges. And in the landscaping analysis that the Community Foundation conducted, there were really two areas where we felt impact investing was the right tool to leverage. So the first of those is in nonprofit finance. So we know that many nonprofit organizations in Teton County have difficulty accessing the financing that they need from traditional banks or other financial institutions. Their terms are often not a fit. The rates are too high. They're not flexible enough. And so there's a real need for more patient, flexible investment capital to help them grow. And then, as I'm sure many of you know well, housing is a huge challenge in Teton County. There is great need for more affordable housing for year-long residents and seasonal workers, and this is a challenge that needs a lot of capital and a lot of low-cost capital specifically for affordable housing to really make an impact. So what is impact investing? We really think about impact investing and impact first investing as sitting along a spectrum of capital. So traditionally, we often think about deploying philanthropic resources in two ways. You have on the left-hand side of this page here, traditional investing, where the mandate is to maximize financial returns in order to eventually deploy that capital via grants or traditional philanthropy, which falls on the right-hand side of this page. Impact first investing we see as really an evolution of this traditional binary paradigm. And it's a place where we are seeking impact outcomes. So, attacking social and environmental challenges as a primary outcome of the investment. And we expect some type of financial return, but often that is secondary and may come with higher risks. And this is really a place where kind of you can have your cake and eat it too in a lot of ways and get that deep impact that you like to see with your grants, but also preserve your capital and in some cases generate a modest financial return to be able to eventually deploy funds into traditional grants. Thurika, if you could flip to the next slide, please. So why is this type of impact first investment capital important? So again, some of the benefits to the community that I just want to touch on are that it often unlocks more capital to attack local challenges that cannot be solved with grants, which are often hard to come by, and it cannot be attacked with traditional investments because the capital is too restrictive or return oriented. This is also a place where you can really support solutions with underlying business models and address challenges sustainably. So finding solutions to challenges that are scalable over time and have a market-based mechanism for impact. And finally, really financing organizations like nonprofits in the community that are otherwise not able to access the type of capital that they need at the terms that they need. And then from a philanthropist or a foundation's perspective, impact first investing can be a really useful tool to address community needs today, unlocking some of that invested capital and putting some of it into an alternative investment that gets capital out into the community today, but also still allows preservation of capital for long-term charitable goals and to keep up with inflation. And so with that, you get this multiplier effect where capital can be continuously recycled as impact first investments are repaid and then eventually granted out to the organizations or causes of your choice. And this is a tool that we are seeing community foundations across the country adopt in spades. Over the last 5 years in particular, more and more community foundations like Jackson Hole, Community Foundation of Jackson Hole, are launching impact first investing programs to meet the needs of nonprofits and small businesses and affordable housing developers in their communities. And so you can see on the page here, there's over 100 community foundations across the country that have launched programs like this. Social Finance has been delighted to support a number of these, everyone from the Boston Foundation to the Community Foundation in Aspen and in Washington State. And this is really kind of runs the gamut of community foundations across geographies and of all different sizes. So with that context, I'm going to turn it over to Erin to talk a little bit more about the Invest Jackson program and how we're thinking about its structure and focus and terms.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. So now that we have broadly defined impact investing and how other community foundations are engaging, we're going to share a little bit more details about our fund and what we're calling Invest Jackson. So this fund overview slide provides a general overview of the fund. You'll see on the top left, the investment goals is to provide flexible, low-cost capital to support local nonprofits and organizations in scaling their impact. Our geographical focus will be in Teton County, Wyoming. And the investment focus of this fund will be to provide low interest loans and loan guarantees to local nonprofits for a varying use of funds. So it can be from refinancing existing sources of debt, It can be from upgrading assets or technology, and it can also be for bridge funding. We envision ourselves working in partnership with local banks and financial institutions because they're able to provide the underwriting and the servicing capabilities for these investments. The overall benefits of the fund provides diversification, has efficient deployment of capital, and it's responsive to the local needs of our nonprofit partners. When we talk about overall fund size, we have a goal of raising $1 million by the end of this year and 5 to 7 million in the next 5 years to hopefully support 15 nonprofits. The target return of the fund will be 1 to 2% annual, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And the investors, we originally funded our initial pilot investments, which I'll talk about, through our own, the Community Foundation's discretionary funding. So we provided $1 million, and other investors will be our fundholders, you all, other individuals, foundations, and businesses. So if we go to the next slide, we really learned through our initial conversations and feasibility studies that the best way to really describe what we're talking about is to provide examples. So our first pilot investment was with Coombs Outdoors. Coombs had an existing seller finance mortgage, which associated with the purchase of their new Coombs Clubhouse property that was set to reset from 4 to 6%. And what we as the Community Foundation were able to do, we were able to connect them with RCAC, which is a National Community Development Financial Institution, a national lender, and provide and refinance their mortgage through a nonprofit lending program that they have at 5.5%. So bringing it down from that set reset. And additionally, the Community Foundation participated in that refinance by providing $500,000 at 2%. Now, this brought their blended rate of lending to 4.63%, and that saved them approximately $27,500 per year in interest. And what that means for our community is that it's annually 12 more kids in their summer camp. And over the course of this 10-year loan, that's 120 more kids accessing their summer programming. Our second pilot investment, which we'll hear a little bit more about in a little bit, was with History Jackson Hole. They had an existing loan from First Interstate Bank to finance the construction of their new space downtown. We were able to work with Lance and his team at First Interstate, and we shared the idea of this participation that we had just done with Coombs, and they were able to remodel it and incorporate it in that existing loan. So again, $500,000 at 2%, and this brought their blended rate all the way down to below 4%, and saving them $20,000 in interest. So not only were we able to bring down their rate, but we were able to create a model that we can replicate again in the future with other nonprofits. So the community impact there is really great. It helped expand their camps and engaging over 100 local students during the summer. We'll come back to that one during our little fireside chat in a little bit, but really exciting to see these actual investments in action in our community. So I'm going to shift a little bit in terms of what our investment strategy is for Invest Jackson. So how will we deploy the capital? And this outlines our current hypothesis. We envision the underlying assets of this fund to be low cost, flexible investments via direct loans and loan guarantees. The term of those investments will be up to 10 years, and the rate we anticipate is about 2 to 4% charged to borrowers. Our ideal loan size or investment size will be between $200,000 to $1 million and really will depend on the need of the investee. The bottom part of this slide is the investment criteria, and you'll see that we have both financial criteria and impact criteria that will be going into consideration. So for financial, we'll be considering terms alignment, what's their source of repayment and track record, the organizational health. And then from the impact side, we'll be making sure it aligns with our geographic focus. What is the depth and scale of impact outcomes that they anticipated? Does it align with the Community Foundation's strategic priorities? And is this really a need for impact first capital? Can this be accessed sufficiently elsewhere? And then also considering any potential unintended negative impacts. So to turn to the next page, how could our fund holders participate? And we really see two different methods of participation. We have either an investment option or we have a grant option. So a fund holder can make an impact investment with philanthropic capital to earn a modest financial return through the investment option. And this really preserves capital for long-term grant making. And the second option is really a grant where you can provide that evergreen capital continually recycles over time. The slide you see now is more the nuts and bolts of those two different participation streams and how they contrast one another. So from the investment side, you'll see that it's open to our current community foundation fund holders as well as new individuals who create funds, and it will be through an impact investing donor advised fund or DAF. The minimum for an investment would be $25,000, and again, that target return is the 1 to 2% annually, net of the fee. Since we're talking about fees, the fee will be 1% on the committed capital just in that impact investing DAF. And this fee will really go to cover our ongoing due diligence of the investments, the servicing, the reporting, and the management costs. There will not be an additional admin fee associated with the donor advised fund, just that 1% fee. The investment term is really mirroring what we think the term of the underlying investments will be, so it'll be up to 10 years. But our goal will be to consider any early withdrawal by request. And during this lockup period, the funds would not be available for traditional grant making. Now, for the granting terms, if you wanted to grant to the fund and not invest, this is really open to any individuals and institutions. There's no minimum and there's no target return because any returns that are generated from that capital will be redeployed into future impact investments, that evergreen nature of the fund. Both of these doesn't matter which participation stream, the governance will be the same across each. We have an impact investing committee, which is comprised of board members and independent experts, including bankers, financial advisors, investors, accountants, and other professionals. The multi-pronged strategy that we're taking to risk management really focuses on our co-lending with local banks and established nonprofits. And lastly, we'll be reporting to donors and investors annually on both the financial returns and the impact that this fund has created. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ian McLeod, who is the chair of our Impact Investing Committee, and he's going to lead a fireside chat with some representatives of our initial pilot investment. So I'll turn it over to you, Ian.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. Well, again, just as Erin said, I'm a board member at the Community Foundation. I also have the good fortune of working with Erin on impact investing, so I'm the chair of that working group. Also, we have Morgan Jowan. Morgan is the executive director at History Jackson Hole, and Lance Ash, who is a vice president and a commercial loan officer at First Interstate Bank. So first of all, I want to thank Morgan and Lance for being with us today. Really appreciate it. And really thank you for letting me ask you a few questions to sort of shed a little bit of light on the importance of the transactions, but how not only has it affected your organization, but how you think about the potential for impact investing in the Valley. So I'm going to kick off with you, Morgan, and I'd love to have you, if you could, just share a bit about the history, about History Jackson Hole and why you pursued the new building and the construction loan to finance it.
Sure. Thanks, Ian and Erin and the whole team for including me today. This is obviously one of my favorite things to talk about is this project, so happy to share a lot of details. And so I just want to start, I think a lot of you are familiar with what we do here at History Jackson Hole. We recently rebranded from the Jackson Hole Historical Society and Museum. And our mission in the simplest sense is to collect, preserve, and share the history of Jackson Hole. And so we bring together community members to connect with each other, to learn about our past, and to shape our future. And yesterday we had a really busy day in our new museum campus, and so I thought I would just share kind of a snapshot of what yesterday looked like for us to show you how we're really activating and using our new museum campus. So yesterday we had a visiting historian and author come to History Jackson Hole in the History Museum. His name is Steve Kemp. He's written both children's books and adult books. And so in the morning, he read his children's book that's titled We're Going to the Mountains. And we had 70 local kindergartners and preschool students in our classroom space listening to him. In the evening, he then gave a illustrated presentation out on our deck about his recently released book that's called An Exaltation of Parks, John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s Crusade to Save America's Wonderlands. So really focused on Grand Teton, as well as other national parks across the country. We also had our collection manager working with a family who came in to donate some incredible historical photographs to our collection, which has over 20,000 historical photographs related to Jackson Hole. And here's an example. I know this will be hard to see, but this was their father, who was part of the Civilian Conservation Corps camp that was here in Jackson Hole in the 1930s. We also had an after-school club in our classroom later in the afternoon in conjunction and partnership with Teton Literacy Center. And then I also had a finance committee meeting with our board members. So a busy day, a full day at the museum. And I point all of that out to just show, we're able to do this work and really serve this community because of our new space, which was made possible with many different resources here. So to give you just a little more specific background about the project, in 2017 and 18, I came on board, and the Historical Society was operating out of 3 different leased properties spread out around downtown. All of them had some type of complication, whether escalating rent or in a pending termination from Teton County. So lots of complications with our space. And really quite unsustainable for a nonprofit that really relies on space to gather people, exhibit our history. I also want to point out this was a time, I would say, when conversations and interest around change and growth in Jackson Hole were really starting to heat up. That's a long story here that has been going on for a long time, but it really seemed like we're kind of coming to a tipping point with that. And so we really leaned into that to prioritize talking about the past, present, and future of Jackson. So I would say these two things paired together, like this increased interest and as well as the operational importance of finding a stable, permanent home for our organization, really set us on the path to create our new history museum. And so the project started in 2019, which was really just kind of an idea and a small part of the very successful Save the Block campaign, which allowed us to purchase this southeast corner on the historic Van Vleck block. And then we began raising funds, first from local SPET dollars, then grants, and then the majority from private philanthropy. So the total cost of the project was about $17.5 million. That was land purchase, design, construction. And we had about 85% of funding in hand when we broke ground in September of 2022. And 1 year into construction, we went to Lance and First Interstate Bank to help with some financing so that we could finish the project. So that was to loan against confirmed pledges that we had in hand, as well as the fundraising, the capital campaign gap that we were still working towards closing. So we were able to just finish construction in about 18 months, I think, and we opened the museum in June 2024. So just had our 1 year anniversary and worked closely with Aaron and this team to refinance our debt.
Awesome. Thank you, Morgan. That was great. So I'm going to just jump back to the impact. So for you, for the organization, how has this transaction sort of helped you think about impact?
Yeah. I think maybe when I left work last night, I thought, oh, let me share this day, because really, the savings that we're able to realize from getting our combined interest rate down, we budgeted for that because we entered into this financing situation with First Interstate Bank now several years ago. And so, we were prepared to pay a considerable amount of our operating budget towards servicing the debt. And now with this lower interest rate, we're able to put that directly into our programming. So it's similar, to the Coombs quote. It's direct cash that then we're able to use towards our expanded programming. I also wanted to point out for us, because we are still working really hard to finish our capital campaign and just close the debt or close the gap and pay off the debt. I do think being part of this program has helped us message to our donors and members how we're, responsibly taking steps to work through that debt. We also, again, over the last year and over the last several months, have been able to secure some major donations that just continues to bring down our overall balance. So, very tangible, I think, benefits to us that have had significant impact, and then some more intangible value as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'll turn it over to Lance, which is tell us a little bit about sort of First Interstate's role in the process and why this was something that you guys allowed us to be part of the process, right? Why were you interested in sort of partnering with the Community Foundation?
Yeah, thanks, Ian, and welcome everybody to this afternoon's presentation. I'm thankful to be here today on behalf of First Interstate Bank. And yeah, our role in the process was, I guess, at the beginning, a lot of heavy listening and learning. I think this is a new venture for a lot of us. I'd like to say that in banking, we always try to have a creative spirit to us, but when you're a very regulated organization, it's oftentimes not that easy to do. So I'd say that our role was really heavily just listening to Morgan and her board of directors as to the challenges that they were up against and what they were trying to accomplish. And I would say that was a very productive ongoing conversation. And then getting introduced to Aaron and the Community Foundation's impact investment program, and really just how can we work together to drive an outcome that benefits everybody. And so once we kind of identified with Morgan and her board really what their goals were from a financing perspective, the heavy lifting kind of started in terms of developing financing structure and documentation to help facilitate what that strategy would look like. And I very much appreciated, working with Aaron. It was a lot of collaboration, letting the bank do what it needed to do to understand the process and what the overarching goals were. That partnership and collaboration was paramount to that. I'd say that the bank's interest in this program, it was said earlier, I think oftentimes nonprofit financing needs and bank financing models don't always provide direct alignment with what the nonprofit's goals are. And so we tend to find solutions that we call maybe a close fit. And so where this impact investing program is exciting for us, it helps more properly align, if you will, the financing model to what the nonprofit needs. And where that oftentimes can get off kilter is to Morgan's earlier comment. You're doing capital-based projects and you're funding it with operation dollars. And so every operation dollar that is supporting a capital project is less operational dollars to support the program, which is ideally what it's intended to support. So we're extremely proud of being involved in this, and we want to continue to be because it does help with that alignment. And that mismatch is oftentimes not just, banks having our set ways of doing things with credit structure, but to the other comment, it's a capital cost. We have certain costs in our business models that require capital to cost what it costs. And so the impact investing provides a nice gateway, if you will, to take different strategies and capital costs and provide a yielded outcome for our nonprofit community that they can sustain and benefit from. First Interstate Bank, a very core value for us is commitment to community. And we live that every day. So through this program, what's important to us is being able to provide accessible and mission aligned financing that has sustainability to it. And that's one thing I particularly like about this program is it was mentioned earlier as an investment vehicle, that capital gets recycled. So there's some sustainability to it. I think that we worked really hard with Morgan and the Community Foundation to create a model that we hope that we can repeat and replicate. So that metric is what allows us to, I think, in part, to recognize our commitment to the community.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lance. And I think our approach from the Community Foundation's perspective is we want to partner with banks. And I think it helps that you all have the expertise and the infrastructure to help underwrite and service these loans. Sort of as you think about it going forward after this transaction, how do you think that works? Like, how do you think that the combination of your expertise, our dollars, working with the nonprofits, do you all see yourself as sort of the fundamental rails upon which we can continue to expand the program?
Yeah, absolutely. All banks have credit capability, generally speaking, and specifically with First Interstate Bank and our local banking community. I think that local knowledge is extremely important for nonprofit lending and this impacting investing model in our community. We have the experience on the local market. We can underwrite locally, and I think those two combinations of things allow us to collaborate with the client, and we can be very transparent very easily and quickly. When you think about this program, there's a lot of stakeholders at the table that need to make decisions, and those decisions need to be timely and they need to be done almost succinctly. So having that local impact and local knowledge and ability to adapt quickly, I think, is important to this model going forward. In our bank, we have a pretty significant regional reach. So we have access to a lot of internal and external subject matter experts, which I leaned on pretty hard, frankly, to get this done. And that will only pay dividends going forward. So again, it's replicating that model for us. We want to be involved. And, banks bring a lot of capabilities, but I think to this impact investing program, capacity is probably the number one thing, right? We bring structuring understandings, we bring underwriting expertise, we bring funding capacity, servicing, collecting. And if a bank is involved, it's not to say that the Community Foundation couldn't establish its own infrastructure, but I think it's smart on their part to lean on the banking community because we already have it. And generally, if we're involved, we want to help kind of guide those attributes because we're trying to help assess our risk profile all the time. And it just helps, I think, make it a more streamlined process. And obviously the banking community, we bring all of our banking platform to the table as well. It's not just a credit aspect, it's what other things does a nonprofit need to help also impact their operation in a positive way.
Yeah, great, thank you. Morgan, I'm going to ask you a big picture question, which is, how do you think, I mean, you did one, right? But how would you describe sort of the value of impact investments for nonprofit like yours relative to, just having the traditional capabilities in the marketplace?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say for us, working with First Interstate Bank and Lance to begin with and entering into more of a traditional construction loan, they did make it as easy as possible for us, I would say. And so we were really grateful for that partnership and that generosity. And then the Community Foundation coming in and helping provide additional relief was truly like the cherry on top that really set our organization into a place where we could be successful in this new space. So, and I also think leading up to our project, you know, we worked hard to make sure we were in a strong financial position and position in the community that we felt like we could see this through. So I think, you know, funding any type of capital campaign and capital project, you want to really put that groundwork in beforehand. But I mentioned this at the beginning too of for as with most capital projects, and I didn't quite understand this because this is my first role at a nonprofit and with a capital project, but you know, moving forward with construction when you only have a portion of the funding secured is quite scary, right? Again, but it's typical, and boards have to make decisions like that. And I would say our museum board, you know, really boldly moved forward and really assessed the situation of thinking about, yes, we don't have all of the funding in hand and we will figure it out, and that will be better than stopping the project and having to deal with additional costs down the road associated with escalation and remobilizing the project. And so it is, you know, there's so much that goes into capital projects. And I think having a resource like impact investing here in this community now really will help smooth that over and give nonprofit organizations and boards and staff members, you know, I know it's not guaranteed, but kind of that confidence and that partnership to really be diligent and thoughtful seeing a project through.
Great. And so I have, and I know I'm running up on my time for our chat, but if there's anything else either of you would like to add around sort of other things that excite you about the launch of this program, and I know you've covered a lot of it, but if there was anything that you left out or we left out as part of the conversation, I just sort of open up a little bit of space for that.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think the most exciting part is it might take a nonprofit from thinking the answer is going to be no to the answer being yes. And that might even start before they even call the bank, as an example. That could just be internally at a board meeting of, boy, this seems overwhelming and we can't get there. And then if they're aware of this program and they know that there's resources to support them, that can convert to a yes answer. And size of dollar may not be as material as just getting the dollar, however much that is. And I think that, coupled with, to my earlier comment, that proper alignment between what the nonprofit's operational budget really can weather, if you will, that's what I think is very exciting about this program. It creates that gateway and platform to provide that properly aligned financing for the organization.
I would add too, specific to our project, the History Museum was fortunate enough to start this project, like I said, with SPET dollars. And so local voters approved initial tax dollars to help us purchase the land and start design. And we've had a long partnership with Teton County, which allowed us to do that. And there were many conversations at the beginning of our project saying, okay, if we get the SPET, we're moving forward. If not, we don't think this project is viable and feasible for us. And I know SPET dollars and you know, are not available to all nonprofits. And so I think, you know, that's where impact investing can step in and really be perhaps a like starting point for nonprofits to get these big ideas that they have off the ground. And the other thing that we saw is once we started the project and, you know, had things to show potential donors in the community, it just gained momentum and continued to grow from there. So again, we were really fortunate to kind of build it step by step, but you need that starting block. And I think that's where impact investing can really help these projects get off of paper and into reality and go from there.
That's great. Well, I want to thank both of you again, Morgan and Lance, for for being with us today and sharing your thoughts, which were great. So thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Erin.
I believe I am jumping in here.
Oh, sorry,
Thank you
Kathleen.
again so much, Morgan, Ian, and Lance. That was fantastic, and really appreciate you all bringing the program to life and showing what the impact can be on a deeply human level for the community. At this point, we would love to open it up for questions from our audience members today and welcome you all to either raise your hand or if you feel more comfortable, put your questions in the chat and feel free to address to the Community Foundation team, any of our panelists, or me and my colleagues at Social Finance. I see Erica, a few hands. I saw Erica first, and then we'll go Bill and iPad 39.
Hi, and thank you. This has been awesome. And I'm sorry if I missed this piece, but when you make the commitment to an organization, you know, say to the History Museum, and you say they're going to, oh, let's just say Coombs, and you're saying now they're going to be able to have 12 more summer camp kids. Is that in writing? I mean, is that what they are obligated to use the saved resources for? Or is that just an idea of what they could do?
So,
Can they use that money for anything they want? Or have they said, you know, you give us this loan and we'll take that money and is it contractually obligated? Does that make sense?
mhm. So it's not contractually obligated. What the beauty of is that we're saving them operational dollars. So we're saving them funds that can go, as Morgan said, go right back into their programming. And when we spoke to Jenny afterwards, we were talking about trying to that reporting mechanism of what is the impact this is having? Like, give us the real, like, what are those funding going towards? And that was more her sharing what they were able to reallocate those save resources to. And that's, you know, at the nonprofit is developing their programming, but that's the real impact to our community in terms of those saved dollars in operations.
Thank you.
Okay. Bill, I'll let you go ahead next. Oh, I think you are muted, Bill.
Now, yeah, I wanted to run through the mechanics of this that I know that I have a thorough understanding. We establish, as a donor, we establish a separate donor advised fund for impact investing. Is that right? And then presumably there might be a 1% to 2% return. That I presume there's no tax consequences on that. That is just administratively, that's just put back into your fund. Okay, then there was a mention of a 10-year commitment. And I presume that applies to the corpus of the fund. But what kind of a commitment are you making to the nonprofits in terms of the long-term financing?
I'm going to take that, Erin.
Sure.
Yeah, happy to have you jump in. So that is all correct, Bill. There is a 10-year lockup period or investment term that is associated with the impact investment option if you are participating as a fund holder with a new impact investing DAF. Now, the term of the underlying loans that the fund would be making may vary. So they could be as short as 1 or 2 years or as long as 10 years. We anticipate on average that the average term of investments would be around 5 years. And so you could anticipate having your funds recycle within that 10-year lockup period to multiple organizations, again, depending on the term of the underlying investments. Does that help clarify?
Well, yeah, it does. But so I'm thinking about in terms of a mortgage that in partnership with the bank, you know, a typical mortgage might be, I don't know, 20, 30 years. How does the nonprofit sort of account for that? I mean, I guess in terms of additional fundraising on their part, but you certainly don't want to jeopardize them in 10 years. All of a sudden they've got $500,000 that's come due. How do you take that in consideration?
So
Or how-
the underlying investments will be kind of reviewed on a case by case basis in terms of their deployment. And the Coombs one is a 10-year loan, whereas the History Museum is a 30-month participation. So I think it's at that time, the initial conversation of our offerings extend up to 10 years, and seeing if that alignment in terms of the length of our investments as well as their needs aligns during that review process is a key component of consideration.
Okay. And then at the risk of monopolizing my time, one more question. Outside of capital use for construction, what other kind, the minimum size loan you're anticipating is 200,000, is that correct? So what are some other thoughts on where that would be used outside of construction? I mean, and how would and who's going to make that determination on due diligence and that sort of thing?
So I think one of the extremely beneficial aspects of the fund's development was doing that community scan with our nonprofits, where we learned directly from nonprofits in our community 60 different ideas for investments. Some of them were bridge financing, some of them were asset upgrades, so just current buildings that need solar upgrades or they just need equipment upgrades. Some of them were vehicles, some of them were revolving loans, just starting to understand what the need is. So yes, it was new assets in terms of capital expenditures for new buildings. And that came through very clearly that some of our nonprofit partners have existing debt that is high in interest and could use refinancing to bring that down. And then one of my other favorite examples, which would be on like the smaller side of investments, was the music school had this idea where they would love to have the ability to rent out instruments to the participants, but they don't have the capital up front to buy all those instruments. So could we provide flexible capital to them to buy all those instruments so they could lend them out to their students and eventually it would be repaid through those like lease payments with their students. So that's something, it's a little bit smaller in scale, but could also really make a great impact for the music school, as well as for any parent that's on this call that's had to lease instruments from a different organization. It really would eliminate a lot of that transactional need from other sources. So
And your committee would make that determination.
yep,
Here.
we have a intake and review and due diligence process that we're fleshing out.
Okay, thank you.
So hi, Ted Stark or iPad 39. You can call me either. I have a question for you guys regarding investment risk. I would say I think the two investments you made to date are very low risk and nice impact. But in calling this impact first, it somewhat infers that you might be willing to go out on the risk spectrum to get in the financial risk spectrum to get a higher impact. And I'm just wondering how you are thinking about balancing sort of risk with impact.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, Ted. And I think, and Aaron, feel free to jump in here. I think with these first pilot investments, we really want to build a track record for the Community Foundation and make sure that, we're investing in organizations that have clear sources of repayment and track records. But I think, to your point, there is opportunity to take on more risk as processes are refined and as the program grows. And we want to do that in an intentional way and make sure that we understand those risks and the mitigants that are in place and have proper structures to allow the fund to absorb that risk, including things like implementing a loan loss reserve that would help to cover any potential losses that are incurred. But I think, you're spot on in that as impact first investors, if we don't see any losses or take on any risk, we're really not doing our job. Erin, anything you would add to that?
I was gonna say too, as we build it out, that loan loss reserve could be a potential way for us to mitigate the risk. And it's something that we are currently considering.
Any other questions from the group? If not, maybe I'll hand it back over to Erin to talk a little bit how folks can learn more or get involved.
Yeah. So we have one last slide to share. How do you get involved? I mentioned this before. Our goal is to raise $1 million by the end of 2025. We've already deployed $1 million into our community. We want to raise $1 million by the end of the year for additional investments. And I'm excited to share that we have one anonymous investor who's already committed to $250,000 to really get us a quarter of the way already to that goal. And if you are interested in participating either through investment or grants, please feel free to. My email address is there. Phone number of the Community Foundation. You can always call me. We also have on our website, under the impact investing portion, additional information on the program, a lot of what you heard today, but also an area where it's want to learn more. And there's a current Fundholder section. You can click on that and fill in your name and email, and it will come directly to me, and I'll reach out to you. So you don't even have to reach out to me if you don't want to, but we're really excited to launch this with our fund holders, with those that know us best, and get this money into the community supporting our nonprofit. So excited to hear from you all. And if you have any questions, this is my phone number. The phone number is on there. The email's on there. Just please feel free to reach out. Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.